I'm Marcus Grant. I'm alongside my pal Adam Rank over there, and we're going to talk about some players you might consider avoiding on your fantasy roster this year. But before we do that, I got to take this moment to talk about the all-new NFL Fantasy Football app. I mean, it's fantastic. Look, there's a new draft client. There's a Hall of Fame feature, which is pretty awesome. Look, you can get in-game live video. But, Rank, I think the best part has to be the ability to see our faces in the player stories all the time, right?
Yeah, I still mark out if I'm sitting there and I'm like, why is Hunter Renfro's name highlighted? Oh, it's me. It is pretty exhilarating.
Yeah, I think most of the views actually come from us pretty much clicking on the players that we know we did. But for those of you who watched it, we do thank you for those views as well. Now, let's talk about some players that maybe you might want to think twice about before you draft them on your fantasy roster. Rank and I each picked 5 players. Let's look at Adam's list first and go through those if you don't mind.
Now, I need to point out, this is based on where they are being drafted. If any of these players are available in the 15th round, of course I would take them. Except for you, Amari Cooper, 4 games with 100 receiving yards in weeks 1 through 10. 0 such games week 11 on. You had 5 weeks with fewer than 10 fantasy points per game, and you're always on the field. But of course, there's some other big names, but I feel they're being overvalued, and I think most people would agree you need to avoid those players this season. So, Marcus, on to you.
Well, let's talk about one of those big name players, because the guy at the top of the list was Lamar Jackson, which I'm thinking everybody who's watching this video looked at that and said, what? So explain to them why Lamar Jackson is overvalued and a player maybe to avoid.
You know, I was hoping to kind of avoid this conversation. I just was trying to slide this by. But really, last year, Lamar Jackson went off the board in the 11th round, thereabouts. You know, I know that in the league that we played in with all the fantasy footballers and Desi Banks and the Cody Rhodes and Brandy, like I got him in the 11th round, and he was amazing. And he obviously got me all the way deep into the playoffs before I was usurped by Jameis Winston, which is the exact point of why you don't spend a lot of draft capital on a quarterback. Yes, Lamar Jackson was amazing. But if you're able to go out there and pick up a quarterback off the waiver wire, like Jameis Winston, who even though he'll throw 8 picks in a game and will still have the same amount of points as the awesome Lamar Jackson, well, then it's just frustrating. So what I like to do, is what a lot of fantasy enthusiasts like to do, is wait on a quarterback. There are other options. You could wait for somebody like Dak Prescott, maybe Cam Newton. Trust me, let somebody in your draft take Lamar Jackson in the first round. You take a stud running back, and you go out and you win a championship.
I mean, that's all a reasonable, logical explanation, but you're still going to get angry tweets about it because, you know, that's just how Twitter is. So another name that was on your list was Aaron Jones, who at first I would say you're just being a Bears homer, but he's been a popular name when it comes to this conversation. Explain to the masses why you feel like Aaron Jones should be avoided.
Well, I know a lot of people will look at the 19 touchdowns and say, well, who wouldn't want that? Like, of course I'd want that. That's why I had him last season. This season, he's not scoring 19 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. Plus, a lot of that burst came in just a handful of games. He had 13 touchdowns in 5 games. It was crazy. He had a 4-touchdown game against the Dallas Cowboys where you're watching the highlights of it right now. Reminder, Devontae Adams did not play in that game, but whatever. And so I could sit here and say that I'm a hater and I don't want Aaron Jones on my team. But the Packers GM also said, I don't want you on our team either. That's why they drafted A.J. Dillon. So I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the situation. I'm looking at the guy that they drafted. And to me, Matt LaFleur, coming over from the Tennessee Titans, sees A.J. Dillon as the future Derrick Henry. I believe that's going to happen a lot sooner rather than later. I think people are hoping that Aaron Jones is going to be on the field a lot this season. I don't see it that way. I would rather have A.J. Dillon late in leagues than ever take a chance on Aaron Jones again.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Jones is we talk about regression every year, and he is a prime candidate for regression. 19 touchdowns is nice. Seems undoable again in 2020. All right, so now because I'm driving this car, let's steer it over to my list of the 5 players that you might consider avoiding. And hey, look, Aaron Jones. He's on that list there.
Oh, look at you.
Well, yeah, I'm not even a Bears homer, and I say Aaron Jones is probably one to avoid. Devin Singletary, another one who just seems like the Bills don't ever want him to be great. We waited 5 years for the Devontae Parker breakout. It finally happened. It's not going to happen again. So if you missed it, sorry about your luck. You got Cam Akers at the top. You got Zach Ertz at the bottom. So let's start at the bottom of that list, if you don't mind. And I'm going to talk about Zach Ertz here. And I know we want tight ends to be deeper than they are, right? We've got the guys at the top in Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Mark Andrews. And then Zach Ertz is kind of hanging around just maybe outside that top tier of guys. But you have to look at how it happened last year. I mean, he got a ton of targets in part because there were so many unhealthy pass catchers there in that Eagles offense, right? I mean, you got Alshon Jeffrey, who I know will start the year on the PUP list. There's Deshaun Jackson is back, but we expect maybe more work for Miles Sanders. Jalen Reagor could get some opportunities. We may even see an improved J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. On top of that, we still have the Dallas Goedert factor, who ran the second most routes on the team last season, was second on the team in targets last season. Yet somehow Zach Ertz is still being drafted in the top 50 players, maybe because we're all just so thirsty for tight ends, but I just don't feel like the opportunities and the potential production are going to match the draft price for him this year.
So we're not drafting Zach Ertz because we assume that Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson are going to be healthy. Here's my response.
If you're going to poke holes in my logic, I don't want to talk to you.
I understand. Yeah, the Eagles, I think, were one of the leaders in running 12 personnel last season, which means 2 tight ends on the field. And everything that you say makes sense. I mean, yes, I agree. They would probably want to throw the ball. I think Carson Wentz would rather throw the ball downfield. That's why they didn't draft Justin Jefferson and why they drafted Justin Reagor. Again, though, I just feel like once it happens, once you get out into the field and you're like, oh, Alshon's down again. We hope Deshaun Jackson can be there. I like Zach Ertz. I think that he's becoming a tremendous value. I'm finding more and more that he's been available in the 5th round. And so, again, if I miss out on one of those 2 top tight ends, and I love going tight end early in the 2nd round if I can, but if I miss out on them and I see Zach Ertz in the 5th round, I'm happy to do it.
The upside is, though, that Zach Ertz has found a way to produce before, like, Thanksgiving, which used to be his MO sort of early in his career. It was kind of a late season rise. So at least now he kind of spreads that production out across the year. Another name that I had on my list was Cam Akers. And I know that people, at least right after the NFL draft, were really excited about Cam Akers landing there in Los Angeles with the Rams in Sean McVay's offense. But, yeah, I mean, you were one of them. But so far, Sean McVay has given us no reason to be confident about what Cam Akers' role is going to be. Yes, I understand. Coach speak is definitely a thing, but consistently we've heard McVay talk about 3 or 4 different guys. He's mentioned Darrell Henderson. He's mentioned Malcolm Brown. John Kelly's name has popped up. I think he even mentioned Gaston Green at some point. I mean, that's how deep they're going to go this year in that Rams offense. The other part of this is everybody keeps talking about Cam Akers running behind a bad offensive line at Florida State. Well, the Rams offensive line might not be particularly great this year because that could be another obstacle. At this point, I think I pass on Cam Akers somewhere in the 6th or 7th round when I can wait and get Darrell Henderson maybe 3 or 4 rounds later and possibly get equal or at least not much different production than what I'm going to get out of the rookie.
Yeah, I really agree with the assessment there too. And Sean McVay has also advocated having a running back situation similar to what Kyle Shanahan is doing up in San Francisco. The only thing for me, and the only way I would disagree is, first of all, I would say yes, I would want a member of the Rams backfield on my roster. I just see it ending up similar to what happened to San Francisco last year, where at the end of the season, Raheem Mostert had kind of established himself as that guy. I really do feel that Cam Akers is going to be somebody that's going to sit on your bench for a long time. But at the end of the season, I think that his talent is just going to win out, and he's eventually going to be the bell cow of that running attack.
I definitely think he's got a greater ceiling, and certainly in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues. In redraft leagues this year, I'm a little bit nervous, and so I'm sort of shying away from him. So there you go. We have helped you. You are welcome. But the next thing we'll do to help you is to tell you to download the all-new NFL Fantasy app. You can find it in wherever you download apps. It's all great. We've got a whole bunch of new stuff, as we mentioned. In the meantime, if you liked what you saw, or even if you didn't, you can just pretend you did. Like and subscribe. Follow us on all the social channels, whether it is Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of those things. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.